found out, oh, hello. I found out 2 weeks before my finals that I had it, and then successfully appealed against the classification of my degree. I'm the first person at the history of my university to ever do that and be successful in it. So I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about my story, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about some of the key things that I've learned on that journey. And also, was there anything that I could share with you in respect to that? So what I will do, without any further, let's get the slides up. Here we are. If you could just bear with me, I get my tech sorted. Right, here we are. The key thing, I'm going to show you something now. This is my dish. And this dish represents the art of kintsugi. I think I've pronounced that right. It's a method from Japan of repairing broken ceramics with lacquer. And this lacquer is gold, silver, or platinum. And the reason to do this is to recognize the history of the object and to visibly incorporate the repair into the new piece instead of disguising it. The dish will be more beautiful than the original. This dish is me. This is my dish. Now, before I start, I want to sort of acknowledge that all of our life experiences are different and experienced differently. Therefore, this isn't going to be me saying, I'm okay, so therefore you're okay. I don't do that. Tonight's going to be positive about picking up and starting again, or reflecting about your own journey within itself. And also, particularly with myself in a competitive sector, how I've sort of negotiated those bends in the road, but also how I've identified allies and build in positive experience. I'm going to give some time to reflect and build in things like critical thinking, which can help you both professionally and personally, but also to give time to think that critical thinking doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean, well, what have I done wrong? It's actually more about time to reflect. What do I need? Do I need to go on a course about this? What sort of things do I need to have around me to move forward? So I'm going to give you a very brief introduction. I've worked in heritage for 24 years and I joined the sector in 1997 as front of house. Since leaving the sector and then going back into it, I was promised a dinosaur, an Egyptian mummy and vintage Christian Dior, so I had to leap on that wagon. I ended up being the senior advisory board member for Universal Music for their creative industries handbook on supporting neurodiversity in the workplace. I'm now an associate consultant in regards to equality, diversity and inclusion with Embed and my company DCN, which supports heritage professionals in respect to representation in the workplace, inclusive working practice and service provision for everyone. And I've just been part of a working group in regards to standards in respect to neurodiversity. And also, I've been busy in relation to being a board member for Achievability and Stage Text that provide live captions for theatre. Yes, I do have some time to myself, but for me, I love it. I love it, and I want to clear pathways for people to find things easier for working in museums and visiting museums and heritage, but also in other sectors as well. So, right. What I would love to, I've got a sensory processing difficulty. So I don't have freedom from distractibility. So if you could all remember to mute, I'd really appreciate that. There is going to be time to chat, but also it's going to be a bit fun and interactive as well. I've already said that. For me, you can read all the books in the world, but if there's an object that was created by people who were actually there, That's the difference with me and museums. You can read all the books in the world, but here's an object that was made by another person who lived hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. And this is what this is. This is a medieval jug. And in museums, if you look really, really carefully at the handles, you can actually see the thumbprint of where the handle itself was formed into the body of the jug. And for me, that fingerprint, that thumbprint represents so much about people, creativity, and also about story. The key thing is, though, I'm really interested in the gaps in history as well, of who is telling the story and re-engaging history to people who don't feel represented. I get some people say to me, you're just text and cases. In the end, this is about people telling their own stories about the objects from past and present, reclaiming that history. Museums are unique as well because they're formal education places, but some are founded from the Victorian era to support acts of social reform for people, for all people to enjoy art and objects through self-learning. But the key thing is with this is with huge responsibility in whose story they're telling. Is it the victors? Are the stories got bias? If so, where are the other stories? Why are there gaps? From this can become great opportunities to reflect and develop the social narrative on societal change, supporting communities and people telling their own stories to reveal their local heroes and to support national stories to change minds. This is a real power within heritage. The key question being, how did we get to this point? What has happened before? And what lessons are there? And where are we going with all of this? But as I was saying, museums can feel imposing. They can be difficult to engage and they can be very academic. But the thing is, they don't have to be, and some are not. I've got to show you this. This is amazing. If you're ever in Manchester, go to the People's History Museum. It's incredible about sharing ideas about what the people of Manchester have done in the development of the city and how they've contributed to the world. It's all about the person in the street and what has happened in respect to their contribution to their communities. It's a cracking place. You really must go and see it if you haven't been before. And the recent Museum Arts Fund Prize, Museum of the Year, that was awarded last week was actually won by a group called First Sight that have been cooking meals and supporting their local communities over the lockdown, particularly people that have had difficulties in respect to getting food and meals, but also in regards to their local communities as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening in heritage, and it's about seeing where it's that key work as well as the other stuff that isn't happening. So lots and lots is going on with this. Now, the thing is, I founded my organisation in 2015 to support heritage in meeting the challenges and opportunities of a changing world and society through intersectional inclusive practice. And this was through the power of conversation, good practice and representation of the workforce. DCN is now a part of a cross-sector partnership because using my marvellous neurodivergent head, I noted that the sector itself speaks to itself in terms of its issues, where it needs to go. So we've, as a network, we are connected with people like the Change in Places Consortium. We're also part of various other sort of conversations about equality, diversity, inclusion, but now we've formalized that with Embed, which is really exciting in how we can help heritage and support them in their inclusion journey. I have to write everything down because otherwise I'll just end up going off on one. We've supported change in legislation. We've also co-authored guidance in supporting heritage and other sectors during the pandemic in collaboration with Embed and the University of East Anglia to write the Reopening Recommendation Support Service, which was a free document to support neurodivergent and disabled people working and visiting heritage and also other organisations as they reopen their doors. This was circulated via DCMS, and you can still get it, and also Visit Britain. The key thing is that when it says was DCM founded because I had overcome dyslexia or dyspraxia? Was it in despite of dyslexia and dyspraxia, I was sort of tunneling my own pathway in regards to all of this? But actually it wasn't. It was because I am dyspraxic and I am dyslexic that I actually was able to do this. That was my key tools and an actual core of the whole situation in respect to what I did back in 2015. And this is where I would like you guys to have a think about some stuff. Let me just get onto my slides. With regards to the social model of disability, it's often about the barriers that construct around us in respect to organisational, attitudinal, and also in terms of the environment. I'm an access auditor. I know the power of signage when it's not there and how easy it can be to get lost. So what can we do in respect to the social barrier of disability, in respect to understanding what those barriers are, but also in terms of the development of better practice for all of us? But then there's what people can experience through our different values as we've experienced on our life journeys. Things like our beliefs and our values, our own bias in terms of who we mix with, who we speak to, what papers we read, and also what books we read. What is our construction in respect to what we do and also in what we say? So this, when it comes to values itself, often words that are very weighted within neurodiversity are there because of old values and old cultures in respect to words that we've had in the past, and also in terms of what we can now have as part of our narrative. So this is classic one. These are both off the internet. Dyslexia is a lifelong problem that can present challenges on a daily basis, but support is available to improve reading and writing skills to help those with the problem be successful at school or work. So I don't know about you. I don't think dyslexia is a lifelong problem. If you give me books with Times New Roman, because I've got scotopic sensitivity syndrome or Arlen's, that's going to be a problem. So what else needs to happen and how can it benefit everybody? Why has it come to this point? With dyslexia is a learning disability in reading, like that. So this is what I mean by values in terms of the words that we sometimes have are constructive from a place that is now out of date or irrelevant, but also it's about what can we do to reconstruct that conversation. What can we do to make it better for ourselves and for everybody else? So this is it, folks. Over to you. What else do you think needs to happen to change the narrative? What do we need to do? And how can we reclaim the narrative away from despite or overcome? Another thing I'm going to add here as well, if it'll let me, is representation. There's a lot of talk about this at the moment. What's your favorite representation of a neurodivergent person on TV and film? So you've got 10 minutes and you're all really quiet. So
Becki, do you want people to go to the gallery? Is that how you want to do this?
Yes, you can. You can put it in the chat, or you can literally just put your hand up and speak out.
I think you need to stop the share if people go to the gallery.
Let's just bear with me, folks. There you go.
Right, so just to repeat that, Becki, it's about how do we change the narrative? How do we reclaim our position, and looking at representation within society, media, etc. Have I got that right?
That's absolutely right.
Okay. We have somebody, we have Keisha with a hand up.
Hey, Keisha.
Hi, it's Keisha.
Hey, Keisha. Sorry, Keisha.
It's okay. I've got worse before that.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch a bit on the representation, really.
Yeah.
Being a Black woman who's neurodiverse, who have neurodiversity, I would like to see a lot more representation of Black people in the media, in meetings, in events, showcasing their successes, talking about it more, especially in the Black community. And I have a great platform where I am really going to use it to create that in regards to awareness using the radio. But I just want overall it to be a lot more, more visualized, because I'm a visual person, being dyslexic myself and dyspraxic. So visualization is key. And there's a saying that say, if I can't see it, I can't be it. If we're not seeing these successful Black dyslexics out there, what hope have we got for the next generation to come? They're just going to be lost like many of us have been. Anyway, I could go on all day about this, but I'll go now.
I think it's fantastic what you just said there. I think you're absolutely right. Can you tell us a little bit more about your radio?
Yeah, so I'm based in Manchester, and I have a local radio station. I work in I sort of like running and everything else in Manchester, and I have a show on there called Lady K Aspire to Inspire Show, which is on a Sunday. And what I often do is interview a lot of dyslexic on there who are in my network, people like Liz, people like Marcy, and it's just about creating that awareness in our community to say, look at us, we've done it. I was diagnosed at the age 41 with dyslexia and dyspraxia in the last few weeks of my degree. So I went and missed through school, secondary school, came from Jamaica at 14, lost in the system, lost through college, end up in university, getting diagnosed. And in a nutshell, now it's just, I'm doing my master's, almost finished. So it's important that we're showcasing things like, it's not about to impress anyone, it's to impress upon them that what you can achieve. And that's where it should go, really.
That's exactly it. Keisha, can you do me a massive favor? Can you drop, I don't know if you've got a link to your...
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
If you could stick it in the chat, that would be amazing.
I also have, also just to give it a quick plug, I also have a group called Empowering Dyslexics, and I started it with just myself, and I think we're over nearly 270 people in that group now. So I'll drop the link in there as well.
Please do. Sorry for the... Sorry, I interrupted you there. My apologies for the sort of the drop jaw. That's amazing.
We have Linda now, Becki. Thank you so much, Keisha.
Thank you.
I just want to share Becki's jaw-dropping moment, and it feeds very nicely into the point that I wanted to make. I've just completed my MA. My history is very similar to Becki's, but only I took my degree in 1983, and there was no recognition. But I battled away at my current university to complete my MA. My dissertation was on this subject, and what I think what I want to talk about today, really about changing the narrative, that my whole paper was about. We need to change their narrative. We need to stop talking about mitigation. We need to stop talking in a negative way. We need to start talking about accommodation. We need to start talking about change. I thought your your repaired dish was so perfect. I wish I'd had that. I'd love to have used that. And you're right, it's a beautiful object as well, because it carries your flaws. And what my paper was trying to say is that these flaws are not, they're there for a reason. A flaw is only a flaw because somebody sees it as that. Other people may well see that as creativity. They may well see it as intuition. They may well understand this person's intellect, their ability to have empathy, there isn't enough discussion about the positives. And I don't like negative and I don't like positive. I like to say that, to embrace somebody's strengths, to recognize their strengths, because quite often in a neoliberal world where it's all tick box, tick box, tick box, how fast can you do this? The speed at which you do this is really important. I don't much care about the content, so long as it's spelt properly and there are proper sentences. You must write in proper sentences. You lose all of that. And I actually use Lewis Hamilton as an example because he failed at school. And he talks quite eloquently. There's a few YouTube videos of him talking about his educational experiences. This man is a genius, and who could have been lost. And at Birkbeck, we have on the opening page an individual, I won't name him, who is talking about failing at school, going to Birkbeck, being recognised as dyslexic. He is now very involved in arts. He's a leading person, and he has created a world in which he can function. Which takes me on to Richard Branson, because he's literally abandoned the whole thing and created his own world. And it reminded me of last year when we were talking about maybe creating our own university, a dyslexic university. I thought a bit extreme. It wouldn't run very well, or potentially might not run well. What we seem to have lost, I'm sorry, I'm prattling on. What we seem to have lost is the ability to understand how teams operate and how societies operate. We don't need more of the same. We need lateral thinkers. We need creative thinkers. And we also need doers and makers and happenings. So moving the narrative means we've got to stop the tick boxing, and we've got to challenge the neoliberal society in which we live. No more targets, no more. And I think this change is happening. You know, we're the queues at petrol stations because no one thought that this might happen. So that's me prattling on and trying to answer some of those questions. But I really found, you know, it's very inspirational what's been happening. Very much, it's a relief to hear these conversations.
Yeah, it's yeah.
And I
Sorry.
think that's how we're going to affect change, by more and more groups coming together, forming pressure groups, changing at a grassroots level as well as and on policy level. And I'm going to shut up now.
No, don't worry. And I think it's a really important point, because I know when I was, Catherine doesn't know this, when I went to the achievability launch of the WAC report, the Westminster Achievability Commissioned report on barriers within the workplace, I'd just come out of a really nasty experience and was sort of trying to get my head around it, because I've got quite a logical head. I have to see a beginning, middle and an end. And why did that happen? And what can I do about it for next time? We're going to be covering this as part of our chat tonight. That when it came down to it, there was a moment where I literally, it sounds really bizarre, but as I was going through the report, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I think one of the union people stood up and said, actually, everything that supports neurodivergent people supports everybody within the workplace. It's about creating what those particular solutions can be. And these are solutions about being able to talk about yourself without feeling that you have to be in some way controlled, that it's a way that if you're feeling tired, you can say you're feeling tired, and also being able to sort of create more sort of open opportunities for people to be their authentic selves. And it was so kind of like, this is it. And this was because it had been written by neurodivergent people. And that was the key thing, was that it belonged to us. And we were telling more people this is what needs to happen, but it benefits everybody. So it becomes more of a focus on what needs to happen and positive action as part of those narratives as well, which is so key. I completely agree with you, Linda.
Thank you very much, Becki. Jennifer said something in the chat. Jennifer, did you want to say something? Jennifer offered.
I won't put my camera on, but yeah, it's just so many people in this group have helped me to see dyslexia like left-handedness.
Mm.
And I think this just means, you know, that's just the way that I do things. And so it now feels really weird when people say, oh, you must be suffering, or, you know, all this stuff about problems and things. It's really given me confidence just to say, I really think it's just a difference that's kind of natural.
Mm. That's the thing. It's a really good point, Jennifer. It's all part and parcel of who we are as people. And like you say, it's as variant as left-handedness.
Okay.
Right.
Did you want to, does anybody else want to say anything before we go back to Becky's presentation? Okay, it looks like your presentation, Becky.
Here we are. Just bear with me. It's going to let me do it. Yeah. So yeah, brilliant points covered that we've just had about it's natural, it's all part and parcel of our society. It's an important contributor. People are important contributors when it comes to our collective story, but also in regards to what are we doing ourselves in terms of reclaiming the narrative. We're talking about it, we're having fantastic radio stations, we're looking at connecting with our own people, and it's about telling our own stories when we're ready, but also in terms of what's happening within representation in TV, film and theatre. There's a lot more of a balance now than there has been before. I remember growing up and seeing these documentaries about like that kind of thing. I won't go into the detail because they're a long time ago, but you've now got things like Sherlock where his brain is sort of doing that all the time, and you've got films like The Imitation Game with Keira Knightley, who's got dyslexia, and it's a person who is Alan Turing in respect to autism, and you've got people like Chris Packham as well, I just love Chris Packham. So when it comes to all of the narratives around neurodiversity, it's almost like the wheel has got to keep turning in respect to that. Right. So yes, I can't remember why I put this slide in, to be honest. This is actually real. It's actually a real sign that I found in Torquay, and it's for pedestrian diversion. I have to have signage in everything I do, and because of my orientation difficulties. And the key thing is with this is that sometimes within signage, you think, who designed this? But is it the problem of me being a dyspraxic person? No, the problem's the signage. The signage needs to change. And therefore, the emphasis of change is not on the individual needing to be supported, it's actually on the organisation or the appropriate practice to change to reflect that situation. I was going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. Is everybody okay with that? It's going to be positive. That's what I was going to say. It's going to be positive and practical. Is there anybody that has an issue with that? I can't see anybody.
No, I can't see anybody, Becky.
That's fair enough. So imposter syndrome is a feeling that many people experience. You don't have to be neurodivergent to experience this, but it can be categorized as chronic self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that can override any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. It's that little inner whisper in the ear going, "You sure you know what you're doing?" You know, like that. I chuckle, but it's a very rare thing. I tend to sort of focus on the chuckling because it is something for which can be really difficult to manage. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was, why does this happen? But also, what can we do about it if it should strike? If you could just bear with me where I find my place. Often with imposter syndrome, it's based on assumption of an event or something happening. And that assumption can have roots based on a previous experience. Or it can be assumed that if you prepare yourself, if it doesn't work, at least if it does work, it's a nice surprise. But the doesn't work part can make you feel really anxious and also really worried, and you don't enjoy that experience. Often we work extra hard to prove our worth. And often our worth is what we have assumed or generate within ourselves in respect to this. So there's a great book about adult dyslexia in the workplace. And that in itself can be a really, really interesting phenomenon, because people will often work above the hours that they should in order to support either the work they should be doing, but also to do that extra absolute bang on the money job, which they'll do anyway because they're good at what they do. It can also because, and this is some really key articles that have been made available by Forbes on the lack of representation in the workforce, like we were talking about earlier, and the workplace culture can influence the fear of exposure. So the idea being that often if you're too good at something, am I going to be seen as a threat? And this in itself can be assumative narratives. It's an assumption. It's not actually what's going on, but because it's happened previously, it's like sometimes there's that little voice that goes, oh, need to be careful. So sometimes it's about seeing things for what they truly are, not what they're assumed to be. There's also about the recognition of success. It's the opportunity to really reflect on that success. And it doesn't matter what that success is. If you've driven with your sat nav on a new journey that you've not been to before, that is a success. So it's not about trivializing what success is, it's what success means to you. And also about key learning from the processes. So if it doesn't go right, what have you learned about those key learning points? What can you do for next time as a person, but also potentially as a team? What do you need to do? And it's not about the person, where the person went wrong. Like that, it's the process. What do we need to do for next time? Like that. And sometimes it's about, this is a key one, this is about what can help. So this is my compass. I say this because my husband will say to me, I'll say to him, do you think that's okay? And he goes, yeah, your compass is a bit out of control, like that. And he is my person who I go to when I'm feeling a bit tired, or something's going on, or I'm dealing with a particular challenging situation. Sometimes it's about thinking to myself, how is it different from this previous time? So what I mean by that, if you've had a negative experience in the past, that experience is now gone. It's about how we can reflect on what is actually happening and how is it different from last time, like that. Also refocus using affirmation quotes. I don't know how familiar people are with affirmation quotes when I can say it. There's a lot of good stuff out there. I've got my own box here. So years and years ago, sorry, it's backwards. It says affirmation deck. My only concern is they are a wee bit glossy and you won't see them very well. They're in Times New Roman. So if you have got good topic sensitivity or islands, but the best thing is you can get a lot of them online. So you can download them and put them into any background color you like, and also in terms of your text. So using affirmation quotes to refocus onto that positivity, right? What can I do about this? This is a good, I can do this. What can happen next, like that. Also in terms of focusing on the preparation, if you're somebody like me that's head's going a million miles an hour all the time, sometimes you'll think, I need to know. And sometimes I just have to have it in front of me because I know that settles me and it supports my focus. Are you tired? So whenever you're tired, there's a great, again, Forbes are really doing well at the moment. They've done a great article, which I'll pop in the chat, about the importance of productivity, when I can say it, about rest, and that it's actually really important that we do take time out. Because I don't know how you guys are, but when I'm tired, my head feels gummed up like glue, really horrible, like glue. But once it starts to relax, that's when it sort of becomes more freer and more able to focus. But most importantly, that's when the ideas come, the creativity. So what I'll also do is, sometimes it's about positioning, if you can, where are your key energy markers during the week and also during the day, because that can help you with your productivity. But also, if you're feeling fatigued, you're not putting yourself under extra pressure. And always record your achievements, because sometimes when you're right in the thick of it, it can be really difficult to remember what you've done and what you've achieved. And like I say, achievement is for you. So write it down or put it in a jar, put it on a record it, anything you want to do, but make sure it's recorded like that. And sometimes it's like with DCN, I had moments where I sort of sat there and I went, okay, sky's the limit. What do you want? What do you want this organization to achieve? Sky's the limit. Because that in itself freed up my head in terms of what it could achieve, but also in terms of where it could potentially go without thinking, I need to think about that part first. So what can I achieve and how do I get there? Sorted. One of the things that we're very good at as well is critical thinking. And this is from indeed.com. And it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because it just absolutely was fantastic. So in terms of our critical thinking and our opportunities, when we identify a problem or an issue, and it doesn't need to be a negative problem, it can be something that's happening around us in terms of systems, procedures. It could be something in relation to wanting to do a class. Does it exist? We don't know. Let's see what happens. But also creating inferences of why the problem exists and how it can be solved. This is where we can be amazing, like that. And it's about why the problem exists. And the problem could be anything, just a bit of trivial like that. And where those gaps in terms of that knowledge, what do I need to find? What can I do with this? Don't do what I do. I go down rabbit holes all the time. But at the same time, it broadens my thinking, but also that in the end, it becomes a really exciting roller coaster of a journey, because you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And then you think, well, hang on, if we tried this, we tried a bit of that, and we did this, we did that, we did that. And sometimes with my family, they'll go, do you want a cup of tea? And I'll go, just a minute. And that's where your mind maps and your bullet points, it becomes this whole sort of area. And that's your potential strategy towards solving it. We collect information and data on issues. We do through research. We can organize and sort out our data and our findings. So one of the things about the Forbes stuff that I will circulate is that it's text to speech as well. So there's that whole thing. If I go to Forbes, I can hear it. If I go to my Kindle and I have it as a PDF, it'll download it as a Kindle book and I can hear it and I can engage with it. So you end up with these incredible resources, but also that we analyze what worked and what didn't work. And this is where we need to be just gentle with ourselves, that it's the process that we need to have a look at, not necessarily our own, where the person fits. It's the process behind that that is the absolute key factor. Has anybody got any comments so far? Oh, hello, the chat's gone a bit bonkers. bet a lot of you guys do this already.
There's a lot in the chat, Becki.
Mhm.
There's a lot. There's Linda's talking about her brain needing to slow down, or sometimes slowing down, and it's quite difficult. I think that might be a universal thing, actually, amongst a lot of neurodivergence, Linda. That certainly happens to me. And who else is saying? People are agreeing with you, Becki, in what you say, and like the records of achievement. Does anybody want to talk about records of achievement? Rose, you've mentioned that you think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that I like that. I forget to do it, but I've recently heard someone say, decide on a reward as well for the end of the day when you've achieved, 3 things that you wanted to achieve that day. Actually tell someone how you're going to reward yourself, which is almost completely counter to the way I was raised, which is, no, you don't reward yourself for anything. You just work until you drop with your face in a puddle, and reward is indulgent. But actually, it's incredibly helpful to getting things done, I've found. And listing the achievements, as Becki just said, is really nice. It's just relaxing.
You're so right there, Rose, because I'll tell you what as well, it's something that we, like you say, we don't tend to do. And for me, there's been moments where I think, what have I actually done? And then you write down, you think, oh my goodness, right, that's fine, like that. Yeah. And particularly as well, there was one time when I got completely lost in Coventry. Now, Coventry Ring Road, I don't know why they designed it that way, but they did. And then they changed the signage, and I managed to make it home with my sat nav. I was literally so anxious. I was feeling really, really unsettled. And what happened was, on the way home, I kept thinking to myself, we're going to have a pub tea. My husband's going to be driving, and I'm going to get a big dessert like that. Now, I wonder what dessert I'm going to have. And what it did was it helped lower that anxiety, because I've got dyspraxia and I've got a real thing about orientation. It sort of really settled me. And then I sat down, I thought, you made it back. Wow. And it just helps for the next time as well. Drove through Coventry at rush hour. Crazy.
Okay. Rather you than me.
I know. Somebody said to me that, they went, blimey. And they weren't neurodivergent either. So it was like, oh my goodness. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
I think it's quite interesting what Linda has said in the chat about, is there any research on neurodivergent brains reducing in speed? And there is some research, actually, but it's quite old research. Beverly Steffert, years and years ago, actually did research with St Martin's College art students and MRI scans, but it was on a very scientific basis, Linda. What I think is quite interesting is the fact that neurodivergent minds actually are quite speedy. We have quite speedy brains. And one of the reasons why I think that is the case is we are so concerned to keep hold of information that we're constantly trying to retain all the time. And we're constantly trying to map information. And our brains just go into overload and speed up, because we don't want to stop in case we lose our recall and our information. And that's my take on it. And that's actually a result of my own research that I did for about 10 years on visual cognition of dyslexic artists. And so in answer to your question, I hope that helps in answer to your question.
Yes, it does. I think for me, it's also interesting to have conversations with other dyslexic individuals, because the traits are so profound. That's me. I mean, Becky's conversation about getting lost in Coventry, my speciality is getting lost in Manchester. And I find that I almost just stop functioning for a while, because I almost have to sort of reboot, as it were. And so I remember arriving late for a meeting for the disabled and deaf and disabled group for the charity that I was working for. And they were saying, you're late, you're late. And I said, I'm really sorry, it's one of the factors of being dyslexic. No, it isn't. You're just late, you're disorganized. And they were anxious because I'd kind of disappeared. But I was also anxious because I'd experienced a moment in time where I couldn't go forward and I couldn't go backwards and I couldn't go anywhere. I just had to literally stop. And just take a deep breath and recalibrate. And organizations are not set up for people who do that. They don't want you to do that. They want you to keep producing, and stopping and recalculating isn't part of their agenda. And it was very disappointing to be in a group of people who should have had a little bit more sympathy, really. But also the exhaustion. I don't know if other people experience that exhaustion. And I do wonder whether this is an area that we could set about educating people on. Because, if you look at a colleague and you see that they're exhausted, you support them. But if they sort of act weird and get lost and don't know what they're doing, you get angry with them. And it's kind of how it's a bit like, mental health training. People go to mental health first aid training to learn how to support their colleagues if they think that they're experiencing burnout, whatever. With neurodivergent individuals, the tendency is to increase the burden rather than decrease the burden. And that then leads to an increase in burnout and a further loss of intellect. So I'm just wondering if, these are ideas that could possibly be advocated within organizations, not just how you support dyslexic, dyspraxic, neurodivergent individuals, but how to support those people around them. I've recently read a paper which is entitled "They Drive Me to Desperation," and these are managers working with neurodivergent individuals. They don't understand how they function.
No.
And I just think that this is a really fruitful area, rather than constantly taking responsibility for ourselves and what we do. We actually perhaps need to help people understand how they need to take responsibility for their actions so they don't make things worse.
There's a lot of debate around that, and also a lot of key actions happening with that, Linda. So some of the work that I do, we talk to people about things such as inclusive leadership, and also in respect to the function of EDI within the organisation itself. Because often if you've got a lot of stuff happening, like within heritage, it's highly competitive. It's something for which people will have difficulties in regards to meeting deadlines because it's very sudden. You're looking at competitive funding streams, and often it's about actually saying to everybody, look, this is what needs to happen, because it can help you build in resources and capacity where you've not had it before, because those behaviors have stopped that from happening. So you're constantly, I call it like laying the track as the train's coming, a bit like Wallace and Gromit, and in the end, it's about actually changing that workplace culture. So then if something does happen, the pandemic's been a key example of this. If you deal with sudden rapid change like that, what can we do from those key lessons to say, look, we all learned to, I said this at a heritage meeting, was, my goodness, we can work from home, because it's about shaping that key culture to say, well, we don't all have to be in the organization. Who else does it, and how does it work in respect to things such as we advocate for things like passport schemes, which are based on the support for everyone within the workforce, and about how to create those adjustments that benefit not only the organization but the individual, because in the end, having a happy workplace will create a ripple effect to the customer, and that is absolutely key in terms of how you respond to that change, but also in terms of where everything sits in regards to that service. Keisha, you got your hand up, darling.
Hi, it was really interesting listening to everyone sharing the story in regards to driving and getting lost, because I remember coming back from Liverpool and went round a roundabout 6 times before I was able to get off it. So it's quite interesting to hear that. But I wanted to go back to something you said in regards to the sort of like burnout. Someone who was mentioned about burnout before, and I was reading an article recently by Professor Amanda Kirby, I think it is, and she was talking about, I think it was mentioning about empathy, you know, in leadership and stuff. So that comment where you said about that person saying that, it goes a long way, because they're not neurodiverse. One of our biggest strengths and one of our big good thing about us is we have so much empathy. And that can also lead in going back to burnout again, because we're the yes people who will say, yes, I can do that for you. We're always saying yes to help other people, because that's just us. It's just in us, you know, to just automatically help or offer to help. And so, yeah, I just wanted to make that comment, really.
Oh, bless you. No, I completely understand, Keisha, because also I completely agree. I think one of the key tricky elements that we have is that sometimes it feels good to say, yeah, I'm going to take care of it, but I'm going to let you into something now that I wasn't going to share, but I feel happy to share it with you. And that is, I say yes because I don't think I'm busy. And then I look at my to-do list and go, why did I say yes? Because I haven't written it down. And,
yes.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking,
triple book yourself, triple booking and all that.
And you sort of sit there and you think, oh, what have I done? And then, oh yeah, I've got a spare minute or so. So what I've tended to use is stationery, but really, right, what are you doing? Gmail, calendars, all stuff like that, because when you're under pressure as well, that's when things can really feel really on top of you. You're worried about burnout, and it's that whole reflection, say, it's done, I've done my bit of work, that was great, right, close the laptop, done.
Hi there, Becki. I think Nez wants to say something, and then perhaps we ought to go back to the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but all I was going to say that this has all been extremely enlightening, because I didn't realise, because I am a yes person. Yesterday I was asked by a manager, do you have capacity to do X? And I don't have capacity for it, but it took me half an hour to type back and say, no, I don't. And I kept typing and deleting and typing it again. Eventually I called her to say, look, I'm really sorry, I don't know how to say this to you, but I genuinely do not have capacity. She was like, oh no, it's fine. But I kept apologizing. And she was like, look, Nez, it's fine. I know that you would do it if you could. And I just felt, and I still, to this moment, feel really bad about saying no to her.
Oh,
and I didn't realize actually that this is maybe a trait of, because I don't know that much about dyslexia. I was only sort of diagnosed last year, and sort of screened for it last year. So I've sort of gone through my whole life, and I'm nearly 40, just, you know, this is my life, you know, I say yes, I'm slow at reading, I have typos, I'm very good at proofreading other people's work, really very good. But when it comes to my own, I just can't spot the obvious typo. And it, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, it was a problem until it was, you know, until I was sort of severely bullied at work over it. So,
oh dear.
but, you know, a lot of this has been just sort of very eye-opening. That's why I that's why as I said in the chat, I really want to do something for next week to raise awareness amongst my colleagues that actually there are some of us, all right, we don't say anything about it, but it's not that easy for us to read a screen when they share a document and they say, can you just have a read of that paragraph? Well, everyone's read it and I'm still reading it.
And sometimes it can be a simple thing like having it not as a PDF, having it as a Word document, and you can change the font size or the line spacing or the background color to whatever you need to help you in respect to that. And also that when it comes to yes and saying no are liberating on equal measures. So being able to say no can also be extremely liberating. And I only knew that from last year because I was involved in a conversation with an organization. And it was like, first question, when's the deadline? Tomorrow. And we had done all this amazing work. We'd supported 60 organizations in respect to the sector recovery. We were doing so much stuff, and in the end I said, I don't think I can. And then I had a chat with my fantastic colleague who said to me, you can say no. And I went, I'm really sorry, the answer's no, I just don't have the capacity right now. And I said, but happy to have a conversation in the new year when we've all had a chance to have a break and re-energize. And that was a new one for me, and it felt so good. And I chuckled because I didn't realize that I was a yes person, just like you, Nez. Yeah, great, yeah. Or yeah, I'll do that, I have the capacity for that. Right, look at the to-do list. No, you don't. Like that. And I think one of the things that I tended to do was actually create like a scope out. If I needed to do something, how much realistic time would I need to do it? Because I get tired, I get fatigued, if I'm having to construct something, it's better to do it in the morning rather than at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's about those key flags in the day. So then when you're able to do something, it can be when you're at your best, if possible. I say that if possible because sometimes it's not the case. I've had to look at stuff and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's time to put the kettle on like that because you're feeling a bit flagging in your energy. But it's that whole sort of like the resources and tools that we use to be able to sort of just make things a little bit easier.
So is that also an issue? Because I do suffer, like, for example, I was telling my other half earlier today, I said, look, last week I had a really, really busy week. Really, there was a lot of sort of time constraints and time pressures. And this week, whilst I've got a lot to do, I just can't do it. So I'm taking a slower week. Whilst I've got so much to do, I'm just sort of, it's just not possible. I'm just not going to be able to do it. And so I'm just sort of taking it bit by bit. And I was saying I feel really exhausted. But I didn't realise that was actually maybe something linked to this.
Yeah, it's so because you've had a really busy week previous week, it's like that fatigue can sometimes spill. It can take a few days to sort of re-energize like that. What I tend to do as well, if you're finding yourself really, really busy, is break it down into really small tasks like that. Really try and break it down if you can. And you can do that via mind map and also through using your calendar. So there's some good, I can send you some stuff on time management as well, because that can help in respect to identifying the quieter times, but also in terms of how you're going to feel potentially in the after the busier weeks, like the really intense weeks. And what I tend to do as well, this is another thing I wasn't going to share, but I'm going to share because I feel okay to. if you feel really difficult to unwind, try a repetitive task, beginning, middle, and end. So DIY, reorganizing your sock drawer, things like that, beginning, middle, and end. And all you've got to do is fold, put away, fold, put away. And that actually can help you wind your head down, because I have a busy head. And that in itself can mean that it can disrupt sleeping patterns. Literally, fold your sock up, put it away. Reorganize, sharpen pencils. That's another one that I do. And it just helps sort of just unwind your head, particularly towards the end of the day. And that in itself can help you in terms of getting some energy back. Go to the allotment. Absolutely. I've got pot plants now. I've become obsessed with pot plants, as you do. So I've been growing stuff in a little, in some tubs, as you do.
Okay, Becki, it's probably time for us to get back to the presentation, if that's okay. So sorry,
Thank you.
Fascinating conversation.
Pleasure. I like Linda's deadheading flowers. That's a really good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Right, so we've actually spilled into another bit of the chat, but that's absolutely fine. One of the things I do as well, and like I say, all of our experiences are different, but sometimes it's about who do you have as role models? Who are your positive influences? When you're having a bit of a wobble, is there a quote that you go to or something that you can watch where you just go, yes. Right, I'm going to go and sort it out. Get your sleeves rolled up. Right. Do you use things like affirmation quotes, which are really useful bits of kit? Some of them tend to be, you have to find if they chime with you. Some of them can be quite, everything's just amazing. And you're like, no, I don't need that. So it's the ones that actually sing to you that you think, that's what I need. And you can get them around on Amazon, you can get them online, you can even make your own up if you want to. And also it's like somebody, Keisha was saying earlier, this is about finding our people. And one of the most fantastic things in all of this terribleness is that with Zoom, we've connected with more people than we ever have before. And we've been able to really reach out and connect in ways through Google Talk, through Teams, and through Zoom, in how we can all sort of connect and support each other, but also share strategies and ideas and research and all sorts of stuff. So in terms of that connection, in terms of feeling connected, that can be a real game changer for so many. When I was diagnosed, it took me 9 years to get help because I couldn't find any. And then I found a place called the Dyslexia Advice and Resource Centre in Birmingham. And it was run by a young man called Steve Rose, who was an incredible human being. He was amazing. And one of the things that got us about that particular group was the feeling of connection, but also that this was something that we could manage in our own terms. And it was about actually being able to really reflect on what we were going to do for ourselves. Right, okay, I'm going to start working on what I want to do as a person, and also what I'm going to do and how am I going to get there. And I need to ask people key questions. So when I left university, I didn't have the right degree in order to do a postgrad, but I asked the question and I got it. So it's about sometimes being a bit cheeky as well, like that. So who do you have as role models? Do you have any role models? They don't have to be neurodivergent. And this is my girl. I call her my girl. She'd probably kill me if I said that. This is Nadia Hussain, who I adore because when you saw her on Bake Off, she was, as you can, when you see her on Bake Off, she's a very different person to what we see now on the TV. And she has literally built that herself, but also that she's been very honest about her difficulties with anxiety as well, and has written a book about it. But I just adore her. I think she's great, but she may not be your cup of tea. I think she's wonderful. So, well, who do you guys have? Or is there a film that you like? I watched The Imitation Game, which I end up crying at the end always, and things like that.
Hi, Becki. Shall we keep this to a couple of minutes?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm just looking at. Right, we haven't got anything in the chat at the moment. What have we got? No, we haven't got anybody talking about role models at the moment.
Oh.
Does anybody want to say about anybody who's mentored them or they have looked at as a role model who influenced or, you know, made your life better, made you feel better about yourself? Andrew's got his hand
Can
up.
I just say, sorry, it's Joyce. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Andrew. I think Andrew was first, Kaisha. Hi, Andrew.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So in terms of looking at the positive, aspects of my Asperger's, I had a really good female mentor on the spectrum when I was studying my postgraduate certificate on autism, and she really got me to reframe everything. And now I do, you know, I'm involved with autism mentoring, and I've had my new puppy now for 11 days, and he's really been good at, you know, me looking at, you know, ways of connecting with other people. And yeah, because after my previous dog dying 5 months ago, I was on my own, and also kind of looking always at the positive. So Chris Packham is good, and all, you know, generally I like to kind of, when I'm working with students, to try and think of positives, and, you know, just putting, you know, them at the center of everything, really.
It's a really good point, that sort of people-centered approaches in regards to conversation, but also in terms of key actions. And your puppy sounds gorgeous. Is he good?
Yeah, I've got another Bichon, so he's very similar to Jagger, who you may remember, but he's much younger, obviously. But yeah, he's asleep at the moment, but he was running around earlier while I was trying to concentrate, and I was like, and now he's gone to sleep. So typical.
I love it. Absolutely. Oh, my goodness.
I think Kaisha wanted to say something. Kaisha? I think she's gone.
Oh, it's a pity.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything at all?
Hi, it's Joyce.
Hi,
Hi,
Joyce.
it's Joyce. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't remember how to put my hand up.
It's all right.
It was me that said before. I didn't see anybody. Sorry, I've done what I've missed the screen. I was going to say I had two. One of them was was the poet Benjamin Zephaniah, if I said that correctly.
Yes.
You have.
And the other was one of my tutors, and another one was one of my tutors in the community who's actually dyslexia and I think dyspraxia herself, and she's actually a teacher, and she's actually got us to actually come from, say, a recent in college in performing arts.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
I think
And I just
Adrian.
thought that, you know, because.
Sorry, Joyce. Do you want to carry on?
No, thank you.
It's lovely to see you.
No, sorry. I just wanted to to share that. Thank you.
Lovely to hear it.
Got Adrian with his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of people that inspired me. One was the late Dave Morris, who's a senior disability advisor to Mayors Livingston and Johnson of London. He was kept on by Johnson, even though he was a socialist. He was that good. You know, all the stuff he did around accessibility, universal design, including accessible food. One of the criteria is it has to be tasty, or else it doesn't meet the accessibility test, which I particularly like. Now, he was a neurodivergent wheelchair user, and he had this condition called AMD, but he was also dyslexic and dyspraxic. So, you know, he's sadly died in 2010 from the fallout from this Icelandic volcano that was going off at the time. Wow. And another guy is a guy called Gary Moen, who's on the autistic spectrum and does a similar kind of thing around universal design, etc., and who inspired me and showed me how to do it and explained also that, you know, we need to use things like grey backgrounds, etc. And he's very much still in the land of the living, although he's very much in demand and, you know, hard to get hold of because he's, you know, kind of super computer guy. Originally from the he's a Northern Irish Roman Catholic background, but you know, lived in and worked in Australia, and he was hired for his computer skills there, and also for in Chelsea and London, etc. So they're very much inspirational, and also I'd say St. John Kronstadt, who helps with learning, and who had a lot of difficulties himself to begin with, but prayed and ended up top of his class. Maybe in bottom.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you for that. That's awesome. Yeah. I know for myself it was always Steve that changed everything, because when I first found out I had dyslexia, I was actually it was diagnosed as a SPLD, and it always seemed like the kids were, I mean, that is a debatable point in itself, but when it came to the adults, it was like, I need some help, but I don't know what to do, like that. And then I found it, and it was just up the road in Birmingham, and it was just completely like somebody had opened all the doors and all the windows and let the fresh air in, and it started to make sense of what I needed to do, but also in why I did things in a certain way. And that in itself was just amazing in itself. Right, let's do this. So in terms of, these are just some of my bits and bobs. An affirmation quote is things like this: I am and always will be enough. Because sometimes it just takes that bit of pressure off ourselves just by refocusing, just by saying a statement like that. Also, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't know where to get affirmation quotes from, Jay Blades, bless him, from the repair shop and from Jay's workshop, he's said he has dyslexia, and he posts affirmation quotes on his Twitter feed every single day, which are quite good, particularly if you've had a bit of a busy day. For my back pocket, I've got The Imitation Game. I too adore Chris Packham. I think he's fantastic in the narratives he has done in respect to people with autism. And also, dare I say it, I love Legally Blonde, because it's about the process of the person going on a journey to be something where they thought, actually, I don't know if I can do this, and they do it. And Sherlock, because I can literally point at the screen and go, that is what my head does. This is what my head is doing all the time. And then when it comes to films, it's always Lord of the Rings, and also The Greatest Showman. The This Is Me song, it is such an anthem. I know the background with Barnum from my studying, but the song This Is Me is so powerful in terms of claiming that, in terms of who you are as a person. And I think that's it.
So shall we go back to the gallery?
Yeah, that's
Thank you, Becki.
sorted.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Becki after that really inspiring presentation? Rose.
Hi, thanks, Becki. Lots and lots of new thoughts, and really nice to see and hear everybody again, and just sort of feel relaxed in the company of people who get it. I wanted to just say briefly that I want to ask you a question about something you said earlier in a sec, but I also wanted to just say, as a result of this group and this kind of discussion, my partner and I are getting on so much better, because one, I realize what's going on with me, and two, I realize what's going on with him, and he is definitely one of us. And it's like we've just stopped arguing. It's amazing. And that is a massive, I mean, we do argue over silly things, but it simmers down so much quicker. And that is I can't tell you what an enormous relief that is. And we were arguing because we just didn't get each other's brains. And now we do. And it's so, I'm so grateful, I can't tell you. And it's down to this group. And that's the second thing is, you said an amazing word, which is something to do with fonts and Times New Roman, Scolio, Solo, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, oh, I want to hear that. What's that? That sounds
right.
important.
So scotopic sensitivity syndrome.
That sounds
also,
like important. Yeah.
It's known as Mears-Arlen's, and it affects people in different ways. So what I also didn't tell you was I supported adults for 14 years for people who thought they may have dyslexia but were not sure and were not able to sort out things like diagnosis. So I used to go and screen them for local charities and things like that, and it would be a full report like that. With Arlen's, you have a change of background colors. So one of my adults was green and red. It's green background, red text. I'm green background and black text. And that can change. And it depends on where you are with it, because it is kind of like a spectrum itself, because it depends a lot on the text color, and sometimes even if the coat, what sort of coatings on it as well. Sorry, my brain's starting to sort of.
Can you just write the name of it in the chat, and I can sort of find out more about it, because it's really interesting. I've never thought about whether things are affecting me, but I'm sure this is almost certainly true, and it would just be helpful to know, to be able to read more about it.
Okay, thank you, Rose. Becki wants to ask a question.
Yeah, it was just over a point that people made earlier on about, now I think you said it was orientation disorder. Is that linked to dyslexia then? But everybody's saying they're getting lost a lot. I mean, I do a lot of driving for work and I use 2 sat-navs and I still get lost a lot. I get lost when I'm walking. I can't read a map for love nor money, but I've always got lost. So I plan extra time when I'm traveling anywhere for work to account for me missing the entrance or getting lost, or when I park up and then I'm trying to find the building, I'm lost again. And I do business development, so I visit a lot of places, but I'm always lost. Even going walking, I get lost and can't always get my way back and have to phone. Is that a dyslexia thing or not? I was gonna, and is orientation, is it an actual disorder or not? Or were we just bouncing words around? I wasn't really sure, so I thought I'll ask. I was going to Google it afterwards, but I thought I'd just ask the question. Chuck it out there. It's
much more common, and you can actually get DLA for that. I got it in part because of that. Yeah.
It relates a lot to, so for example, one of the key things I always say to people, particularly within heritage, is that we are, because we're a spectrum, we will have different elements of across the whole profile, so to speak. So dyspraxic, dyslexic, things like that. But I also see, because I tend to work like onwards, there's certain elements of my profile where I think there's a little bit of ADHD in there somewhere like that, because there's just a few things where I think I do that, which I want to have looked into. So when it comes to orientation, oh, Becki, you sound just like me. I have to have Google Maps. I should have sat nav available on prescription. Weirdly, motorways are better for me, but country lanes and towns, I'm all over the shop. If you ever need a magical mystery tour, I'm your person.
That is me. Yeah,
we should collaborate with two Beckys. Beckys and the magical
we could do
mystery tour.
tours. Yeah, there's a business.
That's it. Yeah, because I'll often quip that. I remember taking my sister-in-law on a tour once around Birmingham, and we took completely the wrong direction. I know Birmingham really well, and I said to her, well, that's a side of part of Birmingham that you wouldn't necessarily have seen if we'd gone to plan like that.
Oh, I say that a lot to people. I says, yeah, you got to see something new you wouldn't have seen if we hadn't come with me.
Exactly. And I think it's a lot of it, I can't remember the whys and the wherefores right now, but it's that whole thing about with orientation. What I tend to do is, if I'm not sure about getting to a route, I'll actually take photographs of it on my phone like that, and then hold it in my phone, and that can be really helpful if I'm on site, because I'm an auditor, so I go across the country in respect to accessibility on sites, and so I'll take a photo to get to that particular point, so I can remember it and then remember the way back. Yeah.
There's something in the chat here from Andrew Cooper. Andrew, you're asking Becki about something she said earlier about islands. Do you want to ask, Andrew?
Very kind of you, Catherine. I think it's been answered by Rose. I was just getting a spelling on the Scoptic sensitivity syndrome, which apparently is also known as Ehrlen's.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Well, that just proves I am watching the chat as well, going up and down. Any other more observations from people? You've got a lot in the chat here, Becki, about your presentation and how much everybody's loved your examples, and also people's own stories about orientation as well. Orientation strengths and issues. Anybody else got any other observations before we close and say a big thank you to Becki?
I've got one, which is that visual stress, which I have, is not the same thing as Ehrlen's syndrome, and that's many people may have both, but it's when you've got problems with particular colours and things like that, and it often develops after the age of 40, which they told me when I was diagnosed, and I was diagnosed at the age of 46. Admittedly, she said that it was the only time that I'd ever had to switch off the kind of overhead lights because I was that sensitive to it in her career. She was probably only about 35, but nevertheless, that was quite a statement. And you can have, it can vary what the colors are over time, although mine has remained the same, color preferences, and it's kind of like on a green background and yellow on a green background. But the trouble with that is that if you put that up, a lot of people don't like it. So that's where universal design comes in, and that's where a gray background works for just about everyone. And as something that they can actually read. The most difficult thing is a white background, which can actually cause photosensitive epilepsy fits, which can be fatal, and I have checked that out. There have been cases of fatalities, which is why that needs to be really got rid of on health and safety grounds, apart from anything else.
Okay, well, thanks, Adrian. No, we've heard you loud and clear. We will do our very best to make sure that that happens in the future. Okay.
Okay. I mean, you know, I don't have epilepsy myself, but there are others who do, and it might be the first time and last time that they have a fit. Yeah.
Okay, then. Thank you, Adrian. Okay. Anybody else with any observation or question? Right. Well, I think I speak on behalf of everybody. A big thank you to you, Becki. The amount of time you spent preparing for this, we can see, you know, from all your notes that you wrote, and just, you know, and you're inspiring examples that you've used both professionally and personally. We really do thank you for your contribution. So I think everybody is doing a collective clap to you, Becki.
Oh, thank you. And I just adore this group. So thank you very much for having me and for inviting me, but also feeling that I can talk to you guys. And thank you very much indeed for sharing some of your experiences as well. I really do appreciate it.
Well, I think we appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed listening to you, Becki. I have personally enjoyed listening to you. So thank you so much. Our next adult meetup is on the 27th of October, Wednesday the 27th of October. I shall be speaking. And I'm actually going to talk about neurodivergent voices and talking about participation and how we can better have participation of our neurodivergent voices. I am going to use examples. I'll be talking about an e-journal that Achievability is just about to publish, but I'll also be talking about our work together and what we do in form of participation. So it's about how we profile neurodivergent voices for the future. That's what it's going to be about in a nutshell. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you all in a month's time. And it's been so lovely to see you. Andrew, you have your hand up?
Just very quickly, I have no idea how to get hold of the recording. I just wondered whether you might explain.
Yeah, I'll explain to you now. In fact, I'll actually, thank you, Andrew, you've prompted me.